All right, so this is the flower pot smoker in action. I'm gonna, I just drilled a hole in the side. This is what I call the ambient grill temp. And then there's a little notch here where they meet. I should have gotten two pots the same size, but I thought that one of these would fit over the other one. And it's close, but it doesn't. But anyway, it works. It's a smaller brisket, so I'm just gonna wrap it. And see if I can switch this around. Without getting my hand in there. So that's basically it. It's just a little like 3-pound brisket, but at the very bottom is the hot plate coil, just like a stove element. Then above it, I put there's a wire that actually came from my charcoal grill, but it's just a little wire stand that I put the wood on top of inside those little disposable pie plates. I like to use cherry. And then I had a grill that had rusted out, but I saved one of the grates, and so I just cut it out to fit inside the pot, and then stick that's the meat sensor, and that's pretty much it. So we'll show you here in just a second the programming side of it, the Raspberry Pi side of it. All right, so this is the brains behind the clay pot smoker. So I've got a graph that I can use to watch it. I can see what's going on. This is the past 6 hours. If you can see right there is where I took the lid off during the previous video. You can see it goes back up. So that's the meat temperature. Right now it's 161. This thing will keep the grill temp, which is a probe right by the meat, at 225 within just a few degrees actually. So it's just pretty simple Python that's doing it. It looks complex maybe if you're not used to seeing programming, but it's really pretty simple. And then, you can kind of get a feel for it here. You don't have to print out like this, but you can see it ranges between 224 to 226 roughly. And there's some things in there that ended up adding to sort of catch trends. There's probably way more elegant ways to do this, but I created a way to calculate whether the temperature is going up or the temperature is going down, so that you can start to, initially I had bigger swings in temperature. You can kind of see these little waves like this, and that's just a few degrees. They used to be a lot bigger. But essentially the gist is, what it does is, as it's nearing 225 or whatever temperature that I happen to set, essentially here, or here, really this is what controls it. As it gets close to it, and as the temperature is going up, it'll turn the heater off, because the temperature will keep rising, right, as it's heating up. And then so it'll usually go over by a degree or two, and then it'll start trending down, and I cycle the heater on and off a little bit that way too, to sort of soften those curves, so to speak. But yeah, it basically does its thing. I've got a nice dashboard. This is all free. This is chronograph on a something called Influx database, running in Docker images. If all that sounds Greek to you, it's fine. Just know it's simple-ish and it's free. Doesn't cost anything. You can see this bottom sort of curve is when the heater is on and when it's off. the little pink spikes. And then that's pretty much that. And then I'll do another one just to kind of show what the actual Pi board looks like. It's pretty straightforward as well. But there you go. All right, so this is the inside, or not the inside, the actual brains behind the smoker. It's just one of these little Raspberry Pi. This is a Pi 4, and a little prototype board that you can use. It's got some, you can kind of see different places you can connect things, so you can kind of solder things on there. So I've soldered a few wiring harnesses and things to connect the sensors. And all I'm using for the sensors right now is a pack of these. It's like, I don't know, $10 or $11 for 5 of them. One thing to note is a lot of this, the Raspberry Pi is the most expensive part, and I'm actually trying to work with one of these, which is a Pi Zero. This guy's like $20 or less to run the whole thing. So it's a smaller form factor, it's cheaper. I just gotta kind of figure out how to set it all up and make it work. But so these black ones, it's a DS18B2. It's a waterproof temperature probe. They're good up to about 250, which is good for what I was doing currently with the smoker. Phase 742 is to actually, and I've got most of it working, is to use a thermocouple, like you would have a meat probe or something for a commercial temperature sensor. So I finally, there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can try and do in software to get them to work. I could never get it to work. So I found these little chips here. I can tell you what they are if you care in the comments, but found these little chips. So I'm actually getting a temperature reading from this thermocouple now, so I can take that and I can feed it into the Pi, into my main program, and actually be able to, one piece that's sort of missing from this in here is a 5-volt relay setup. So I've got a quad gang outlet box with the relay in the bottom of it. That's what this connector goes to, the other side of it. And essentially the Pi can send 5 volts on command and relay up to 220 with these little things. It's pretty amazing, but it's just a simple relay that's triggered by 5 volts. And so it's like a $10 hot plate eye. It looks like a little grill eye, but it's a little smaller. I actually tried a stove top replacement eye that was a little too big, and I'm guessing it was designed more for 220. It didn't heat up quite as much. So the hot plate was designed to run on 120. So it does a great job. And I just ripped it out of the thing that it came in, and there was like a thermal fuse in there that I ripped out because I wanted the Pi to control whether it turned on or off or not, and whether it can stay on for long periods of time or not. But anyway, so that's one piece that's missing. So based on the temperature input from these kind of sensors, you can send 5 volts. So essentially all the program's doing is saying, as you get, my target temperature is 225, and turn that hot plate on until you reach it, and then turn it off, and then cycle it on and off to keep it at 225. That's the gist of what it's doing. So once I get this working, so the Zero, hopefully I can reduce the form factor. I'll get this thermocouple sort of built into the code, and I can start using it, and then I can start working on like a box so this doesn't look so terrible. Wires everywhere, but functional first, and then I'll work on the aesthetics. But anyway, it's been fun. I actually started with a greenhouse, so I had watering system set up that I could turn on and off. I actually, let's see if I got one somewhere. There's little sensors. Yeah. Get back here. There's these little guys that's a humidity sensor, or a moisture sensor rather. And so it just measures the difference between these two contacts. Now these traces will wear out over time. It's not super accurate, but it's enough to say, hey, the soil's dry. Turn the water pump on and irrigate it for a minute, or I think is how I had it programmed. And then same thing, I had a fan hooked up to an outlet controlled by the Pi that was reading sensors off of something like the same thing. And then I have one in the soil to monitor soil temperature, and I would turn on and off germination pads based off the temperature that I was getting back into the program. So, and I had, kind of like the smoker, I had a nice graph of it, whether I was at work or whether I was home. I kind of knew what was going on. So anyway, I'm happy to kind of go into more detail. There's all kinds of tutorials and things out there. It's intimidating to try and step into all this little dinky stuff, but I kind of find it fun. It's a fun challenge for me. I learned a lot doing it. I learned a lot about electronics, a lot about how this kind of stuff works, and I figure it's good, useful knowledge, and I'm able to take something for fairly cheap, honestly. I mean, all this stuff, just about any of these sensors are usually a couple bucks a piece, and it's more your time and effort to put into it. So it's a good winter project. That's what I had turned it into years ago when I first started. I couldn't grow anything, so I figured I was thinking about growing things, and then I thought about a greenhouse, and then I thought about automating it, and here we are somehow at a smoker. So anyway, yeah, if you got questions, feel free to ask away in the comments, and there's happy to help if I can. Alrighty, thank you for watching.